In a world filled with conflict, in a universe comprised of differences, there's one thing that absolutely everything shares in common. We all exist. Including two guys named Jack and Michael, who like to chat about that very thing over a good cup of coffee. Let's pay them a visit, shall we?
Existence Brewing.
The melodic sounds of the grinder. Isn't it amazing how sounds can just transport you into another dimension?
Yeah, that was missing in the beginning of the Twilight Zone, wasn't it?
Yeah. You are about to step into a barista's universe. Meet
a dimension of smells and bad tips.
The espresso grinder.
Rod Serling smoked like a chimney, by the way, and died of lung cancer, fittingly, at a rather young age, even for the time. So,
yeah.
But we still miss him. He himself was rather enigmatic, from what I understand. He wasn't quite the Chuck Barris of the Hollywood world, but he was kind of a strange guy. So, Chuck Barris was a really interesting fellow. If you ever get some time, you should take a moment to look up some of the things that he was known for in his off time. He was the host of the Gong Show. We'll need some older listeners to know what that was, but it was basically, imagine a vastly lighter-hearted America's Got Talent that is in front. It's more for comedic purposes, and when they would kick people off the show, give them the hook, somebody from the panel of celebrity judges would get up and bang the gong, and Chuck Barris was the moderator. He was the ringmaster of this little television program. But Chuck he was wildly into conspiracy theories and was known to be paranoid about a lot of different things. According to a lot of people, he may have had evidence that the rest of us didn't possess, for all we know. But a lot of the people that knew him said that he was paranoid about this government, foreign governments, about the CIA, KGB, MIA, UIA, you name it. I mean, he was an interesting guy, and he had a fluffy, like, white person's afro too back in the 70s when that show was on. So.
Yeah, he was very 70s, and in fact, it's funny you mentioned the CIA because I was just going to bring that up. One of the stories that pops up when you Google search Chuck Barris is a article by a magazine that I've never heard of before, so I cannot claim to expect the audience to have give any kind of credit to this magazine at all. But it says Chuck Barris was a CIA assassin, ? Plus other fun facts about the TV game show personality. And I always question whether or not when somebody says that they've worked for the CIA or if, they've done government work in any capacity. Because I think we get into this pretty quickly with the UAP disclosure phenomenon. And I always kind of think to myself, I thought when you worked for the CIA, or should I say the agency, you weren't really supposed to disclose that you worked for the agency.
Maybe they have some positions where you're supposed to disclose it, or maybe they just slip a few quasi or relatively famous people a few $1,000s to say that they are members of the CIA to keep people guessing. Who knows? They love to sit around and play their games in the dark. It's ridiculous. The thing I always wondered about the CIA is, of course, it's the Central Intelligence Agency. So I wonder, where is the northern, western, eastern, and southern flanks of this compass? I mean, they're the Central Intelligence Agency, so don't we have the Northern Intelligence Agency, Eastern, South Central? I mean, I don't understand what the Central is supposed to refer to. Is that supposed to refer to it being the hub of all things intelligence in the United States government? But
I think they would like us to think that.
Because It sounds more geographical in nature to me. CIA, I think, should stand for cocksuckers interested in assassination, don't you? Not Central Intelligence Agency.
So in his autobiography, this magazine actually claims that he worked for the CIA as an assassin in the 1960s and 70s, which actually might point to some of his, I guess, later in life, maybe mental state, as you were alluding to before.
It was just scuttlebutt at the time. You know, it's always was just sort of rumors, things swirling around, gossip that he was somehow involved. But a lot of people who knew him apparently claimed to think that he was quite paranoid. But if he had actually been in the assassination trade for anybody, I would guess that might make you look over your shoulder more than the average person does. And also question what's on the other side of the toast before you turn it over to butter it. But I can see the whole fit. I would know why they would pick someone like a game show host to be an assassin. That makes perfect sense to me, actually. Seems like they all may have had secret lives holding a bow and quiver behind a ninja's mask or something.
I don't know about you, but every time I see Alex Trebek, that's exactly what I think about.
Now, Alex Trebek, speaking of Central Intelligence, there you go. To me, Alex Trebek is was the living human embodiment of the Central Intelligence that is agent to the universe. I mean, the guy knew everything, and he was not humble about it either. He used to say that he knew at least 90% or more of the questions to all of the answers that were provided on Jeopardy. And so, but we don't know whether this polymathing was all about him being a trivia hound extraordinaire, or whether it was truly because he was that learned in so many things and had a vast depth of knowledge about these things.
No, I think it's because
I think it's because he was holding the goddamn answer card.
There you go. That's what I was just going to say. He was holding the cue card, and how could you not know unless he was just completely daydreaming up there? But, being a game show host, from what I understand, Ryan Seacrest just replaced Pat Sajak at Wheel of Fortune. And there was a lot of buzz in the media about how many years Pat Sajak had hosted the Wheel of Fortune. And, it's so funny when you try to hear celebrities try to make something sound far more advanced than it really is. And I was thinking to myself, yeah, Ryan, sure. And they, of course, they had to go over the rules. And I was like, what, the rule by a vowel? I mean, what do you do when you're training to be the host of Wheel of Fortune?
Replacing Pat Sajak with Ryan Seacrest is like ordering a vanilla ice cream cone, getting it, and then handing it back and saying, I've changed my mind. I want a double scoop of vanilla ice cream on a cone.
Yeah, I want French vanilla.
No, not even that interesting. I mean, maybe you got a scoop of ice cream that was French vanilla and you're trading it for regular. I mean, Ryan Seacrest is about as safe a choice as there ever has been for anything. Literally a guy, seems to me like, along with Sajak, they're just stamped out in a laboratory somewhere. It's literally made to just be a personality that really is nothing of the sort at all. They're just in front of a camera. They're just... Right. I don't know what else these guys do or talk about or think about. You might actually be a cool guy, but I think he's just a robot or something. Maybe he came out of the same packaging that Taylor Swift did. Maybe there's a big, one of those pegboard things that they put the Jape cards on, like the Star Wars figures, and these people just get unwrapped from those occasionally when they need to fill a position. Or
maybe it's like a Plinko board, and they just drop the Plinko at the very top, and it just kind of works its way down. And Ryan Seacrest's box is like 3/4 of the bottom, and then there's like another little sliver, and then the other little sliver is Tom Hanks. So it's Ryan Seacrest and then Tom Hanks.
I love Plinko, by the way, and I think I want most of my fates in life to be determined by a Plinko disc. What do you do? A release. I guess you release the Plinko disc. Yeah. I would not be, let's put it this way, I would not be remiss, disappointed, afraid, or otherwise upset in any fashion if the Grim Reaper itself showed up at my door and said, "It's time to play Plinko." And it was like, cool, I'm so about this. I'm going to fucking waste on you, Reaper. And then when it goes into, looks like someone's dying, I'm like, it chokes on you.
So would you say
I want it out of here anyway.
Plinko was your favorite?
Well, I know it was my favorite, but I liked it. I liked Plinko.
What was your favorite Price is Right game?
Favorite Price is Right game? I didn't like the game itself where the little yodeling mountain climber would go up the thing.
See, that's what I was going to say. My favorite one was that one.
Because we like the yodel, and I know that yodel. It's online. If you find the Price is Right yodel, it's an actual yodel that's still used to this day in Austria and all those countries where the Swiss Miss girl literally calls home. So it's a real thing, and there it is.
I don't know why I liked that game so much, but, it just...
What does this make you want to do? Like, what is this the perfect background for? Aside from the mountain climber game on Price is Right, what do you personally see yourself doing to this music?
I think when you call hell, I think this is the hold music that you hear. Satan will be with you in just a minute.
It's funny you brought up Satan, because I had what I am coining a highly satanic dream the other night. Scared the shit out of me. And the dream is hard to describe, but just in short, I was in one of my old cars, a car that I loved dearly. It was a muscle car. It was a 1979 10th anniversary Trans Am. I owned one of those for quite a while and then got rid of it because it just didn't make any sense to keep it anymore because I outgrew it. Anyway, I was in that car, and the garage door opened, and it was sort of like this, you know how you dream about places that very often are similar to places that are familiar to you in this existence, but they seem to be like the bizarro version, like a couple dimensions over.
They're just a little off.
It was one of those deals, and this was representative of my childhood home. We lived on the hill, basically, but there were some homes that were further up the hill at a residence where some neighbors lived, and the kids it was very Amityville horror family, at least. The kids were fucked up. The parents were totally like a mess. The dad was creepy and weird and used to throw scorpions at my sister when he'd find him in the bushes, and he was a wacko. Like one time they had my dad went up there and had dinner. My parents went up there and had dinner with him, and they all disappeared, and my mom went looking for him, and they were in the bedroom, and they were all on the bed together. We're talking my father and the mother and father in this equation, the parents of, and my mother says, "What the hell's going on in here?" And they said, "Oh, we're all on the raft to Jesus, Lorna. Come join us. Come get on the raft to Jesus." And they were like fake rowing and singing hymns and crazy fuckers, man. I mean, and she, no thanks, I'm going to pass. I'm going to skip the bunt cake and go home now. I think I want, to live another day without getting on the raft, this metaphorical raft that's your bed. But anyway, so it was that house, but it was like there was some seriously terrible shit going on there. And it was just almost like a party. It was like witches and warlocks, but these weren't, Wizard of Oz, Halloween. These weren't campy witches. This was serious. And I'm not big on evil, and it leads me to want to talk about evil and good today briefly, or evil and love at least. But like, if you could think that there was something, if you believe in such a thing as evil, this epitomized it. And the sounds that were coming from it were the worst. I mean, the noises were just the epitome of how you might think evil reveling in itself would sound. And there were orange and really like nasty, icky green lights on the yard, and it was awful. It was a horrible dream. It really tested my thoughts. Again, it got me to thinking about my notion of evil, because see, I'm not a yin and yang person. The yin, and I know we've talked about this before, but I thought it'd be a great time to bring it up. And then I got something that I found on the street earlier today led me to think, well, it's also a good time to bring this up too, or something else that's kind of associated in an antithetical way. But, I don't know about you, but I don't believe that there is a dark side that is necessary because we have a light side. I don't think that whatever sparked all of this, and I know that the theory of infinity is that there was no beginning date and there is no expiration date, but I don't think however it got going or whatever, you call the beginning, I just don't think that it's, yes, there's all this good, there's all this benevolence, but now we need to create a counterforce that will balance it. I don't believe that. I believe that if there is such a thing as evil, then it is, first of all, subjective based on who or whatever it is you're talking to that might be aware that they're around in this whole crazy business. And secondly, it would have to be, if there is such a thing, created by one of the universe's creations. In other words, the universe can't create evil, but the things that it creates could possibly spawn it, if that makes any sense. So it got me to thinking about that, because I'm not big on evil, but this dream, I mean, it was, like I said, it was a concentrated version of evil as I've never really dreamt about. And I was wondering where in the hell that came from in my own subconscious, if it was coming from someplace deep inside of me or from an outside force, or did I really slip into a world where, shit like that happens, as I've told you I've been doing recently, this astral projecting business. So anyway. And
it was the cosmic brownie that you ate before you went to bed?
Jack Hansen, he doesn't eat cosmic brownies.
Yeah, right.
If they're cosmic, then they actually have like some kind of frosting on them that would be a representation of the cosmos. They wouldn't have.
Yeah, it would look like our logo.
Yeah, exactly.
It'd be the cosmic Little Debbie.
Be the brownie version of our logo with, you dip it into the universe there and the universe. Anyway, it was quite a dream. And then walking down the street to fortune from a fortune cookie. And I'm always interested when I see those because, to me, of course, it's a sign. It's just like, well, I mean, you were meant to find this for some reason. Someone else didn't pick it up. But I can see why someone ditched it, because it's one of those fortune cookies that's not really a fortune. It's just a statement of something that's really Hallmark. Admittedly, I hate those too. Like, I'm a fan of give me a fortune. There's a reason why they call it a fortune cookie and not a statement of hypothetical fact cookie. Like
water is wet.
Yeah, it's just so. But anyway, it kind of served the purpose, because it's worth reiterating something else we've gone over on the podcast before. It says love is a present that can be given every single day you live. And that is true, because what it goes to is, again, the belief that all people, all human beings, all things in the universe, essentially, really, you get right down to it, are capable of conducting what I would call love energy, whatever the energy is that we define as being love, which is the propagating energy of the universe. It has properties that can be built off of, whereas regressive energies, like things that would be dark in nature or even the notion of evil, you can't grow much there, if anything. It's literally a regressive stance. So you're stuck in one place or even going backwards in this vacuum we call existence, rather than moving forward in some fashion. If you want to think about it in linear terms, even though we don't live on a line like that, it's, gets deep when you talk about existentialism. But anyway, I just thought I find this and I think, well, here I have this dream the other night, and then now I pick up this fortune. And so it's a good contrast, again, a reminder about Jack Hansen's downloads from the universe that he's in touch with, which I have to imagine at least a few of you are sharing with me, that this notion of 50% of what makes up everything in our universe being bad, basically being evil, is completely unfounded. It's a neutral universe that yearns to be nothing but an engine for creation. And if those creations decide to go in what might be considered awry or astray in a direction that would lead us to believe that their acts are evil, well, then so be it. That's what the gift of free will affords us. But at the same time, we also have a benevolence that's there to follow as well. So, we've been given the opportunity to create both ourselves, but I don't think the thing that drives the creation is responsible for either. I think we are. And love being on the other side of that, again, good reminder that you have the ability to channel love every single day of your life, to conduct that through your heart space and give it to others and give it to yourself. And yes, I believe that is absolutely right down to the Mongols and, all of it. Like,
now you're taking it to the nth degree.
I am, because I truly believe that all things have the ability to conduct love, but whether they do or not is a whole nother reason. And then, of course, when we get into the whys, well, now we're really on Freud's couch because, why did those people do the things that they did? Hell, I don't know. All I know is I firmly believe they weren't born evil.
Right.
I think they were born with the ability to conduct love energy, and they just decided to conduct something that was quite the opposite.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up because there was something that I ran across the other day regarding this as kind of a coping mechanism for anxiety and stress in your life, which is if there are things that are stressing you out, you can look at it as a kind of like this existence really doesn't exist. The stress doesn't exist. This thing that is happening to you, although it might be a bad thing, is not necessarily the existence of stress in and of itself does not exist. It's your human brain that is compounding the issue and essentially creating the stress. And so you get back to this idea that we have a choice, and we have a choice in our life on whether or not we're going to let something bug us.
Well, I think it depends on what the stress is. I think if the stress is a mountain lion that is chasing you, if you're stressed by the underpinnings of being corporeal, of being in this vessel, because there is a drive to stay alive. There is a drive to remain biologically vital. And so if you're talking about being stressed because there's something putting pressure on that, then I think it's understandable that the weight of such a thing could be considered a stressor. And the only way to really get rid of that stress is to climb the tree and survive the mountain lion running after you, or to, I don't know if it's a disease, I guess, or something we could talk about healing, but then we do get into the mindset. Then we get into what is possible.
And I think that's the point of what they were saying, is that it's more along the sense of you have a choice on whether or not you're going to put yourself through that agony beyond the physical fears that you might have, a guy holding a knife coming at you, or a cougar, or going off a bridge in your car. Obviously stressful situations, but beyond that, the everyday, not just those kind of once in a lifetime moments, maybe.
Yeah, well, I mean, look at your job. A lot of people are stressed out by their jobs, and they're stressed out by their bosses, their coworkers,
or finances,
the customers. Sure, but I mean, you're choosing to do that. I mean, not only you're choosing to do the job, but we're choosing to play this Occidental game every day, too. We're choosing to do this capitalistic thing where we have a schedule, we give our time away to somebody else and do their bidding so that we can get remunerated tender to give it to others so that we can have the basics of being comfortable in this life, food, water, shelter, because it's all been leveraged. And so I know it's difficult, and I've talked about this with so many people, and they say, well, Jack, it's just so hard to check out. You can't. I agree, and they've deliberately made it difficult to check out. You can't even really get off the grid now. They won't let you. They're passing so many laws in so many states about putting solar panels on your home and getting completely off the grid. Like, they want to promote their new energy because they know that time is ticking on the dinosaur blubber that's powering all of our cars and just about everything else in the world. They want you reliant on the system as much as possible. And so I know it's difficult, but at the same time, again, to be truly, or at least as free as you can be in this equation, you have to remember that you do have the option to check out. You can be an objector. You can say, I am not doing this anymore. And I remember giving this speech to my ex-wife when she was totally distraught about a job that she had, and she wanted to go out on New Year's Eve for champagne at Applebee's, of all things. I'm like, Jesus Christ, not only do I not want to go out for champagne because I'm not much of a drinker, not a drinker at all
Applebee's,
now,
huh?
but Applebee's, we'd have better luck. We'd spend just as much money getting like a case of Cooks at the freaking store and just sitting around with a dog all night. But instead it's, I want to go out to Applebee's. All right, fine. So we go out, and then I get this bomb dropped on me. I'm unhappy. I'm doing this. And to me, as a partner, it's simple. I said, quit. I mean, if it's literally this big of a deal, then just stop. Well, I can't. Of course you can. No, I can't. Of course you can. No, I can't. I'm like, what is it exactly that you think that you can't? I have bills. We have responsibilities. We'll lose this. We'll lose that. Yeah. Listen, it doesn't matter. I mean, the point is that in trying to empower, I mean, I basically brought her to tears. And so it shows you what kind of like motivating life coach I am. But the whole point that I was trying to impress upon her would be the same thing I'd impress upon anybody now that came to me with the same dilemma. I would say, listen, I know it seems like you have to get up in the morning and go do this and endure this because you have all these responsibilities. But you have created those responsibilities, whatever they may be, because of the lifestyle that you've chosen. There are also other jobs, of course, that are available. You will have to find another one if you want to keep consistent and up to date on all this crap that you have to have in your life. And I know some of it's real crap that we need, like food and medicine and, you know, because they've leveraged it all. Fuck, what are we going to do? But the idea is to say, listen, at the end of the day, you know, the old line is nobody's holding a gun to your head. I would go one step further and say that if you truly want to not be oppressed, even the person with the gun to their head has the option of saying no, because that's only going to prove that I am free. And that's one of the things about being in an oppressee that you have to realize is you're making a choice to be oppressed. And this pisses people off, but it's absolutely true. You have the ability to at any time flex your universal freedom by saying, fuck off, do whatever you want to me. I am free at the end of the day of your bullshit. Ask Bruno about that. Bruno's one of my favorite dudes. And he was taken out. He was kicked out of the Catholic Church. He was, what do they call that?
Excommunicated?
Excommunicated, yeah, thank you. He was excommunicated by the Catholic Church. He was persecuted by them. They eventually killed him, of course, because they loved doing that to anybody that might have gone against what the Pope had decided was the only way things could ever be. And, of course, what was this for? Mostly for saying things that we know now. He was one of the first to suggest that the earth revolved around the sun, not the other way around. Yeah. He was also one of the first to suggest, openly at least, that there were other life forms that were similar to us somewhere out in the cosmos, even around the stars that we were seeing in the night sky. Not popular at the time, bad idea. Fuck you, Bruno. We're throwing you. You know, first of all, we're disowning you. So if the loneliness doesn't kill you, then we're going to persecute you and make life miserable for you. And then if that doesn't work, we're going to throw you in a dungeon. And then if that doesn't work, we'll take you out of the oubliette and we're going to fucking just flay you with a knife in front of the town square. He said, fine, do it all. I don't care. Because the man was absolutely connected to his ideals of universal freedom. And so to me, yes, this is hard, but you're choosing to do it. Remember that at all times, and I think it empowers you at all times to say, you know what, I could say fuck off to my boss and everything about it anytime that I want. And you can. And you know what? Your life will go on. It might look different than it does now if you don't choose to put yourself back in a similar circumstance again. But that's also why they have Costa Rica.
We just did an about face. We went from talking about good and evil to spending New Year's Eve at Applebee's, which sounds like a terrible idea. I mean, nothing like kicking off a new year. You know, you always just look around in a place like that and you go, yeah, these are the people that if this is the end of the world, these are the people that I'm going to be spending my last moments with. But
I was feeling more like this is the end of the world and these are the last people I'm ever going to spend my
I have died and this is hell. Well, no, and I think that, you know, what you are kind of bringing to the table, too, reminds me a lot of something. Now, going full circle, going back, which we often do in this program, if you're new to the podcast. Oh, yeah, I know. We go full circle. Nearly half of U.S. adults do this throughout the year, talking about game shows. And the answer is nearly half of the U.S. adults try to lose weight throughout the year. And I thought that was interesting.
Oh, I'm there right now.
Yeah, and I went through some of that as well not too long ago. And I was starting to kind of look into all the different diets. Have you noticed that we don't just have kind of like the Atkins diet anymore or the, you know, kind of low carb diet? We have like these like ridiculous, you have to read a volume of books to really fully understand how this diet is going to help you. And most of them, I don't know how, it almost sounds like more work than it is good to to just lose a few pounds. But it always comes back to, why are you dieting? Or why are you doing the things that you're doing? Why are you working the job that you're working? Well, I'm working the job because of the money. See, and that to me is the dead giveaway of people who don't like their jobs.
Yeah, that would be one indicator. But even if you're working a job because you like the job, you still need the money more than likely. I mean,
but I'm saying that if you don't like the job and you're doing it because of the money, and that I think is where the stressor comes in. And I think that when you're going on these diets, why would you want to diet? Well, number one, 90% of people would probably say to lose weight.
Well, yeah, vanity, I think.
Or vanity, right? And so then I think then you could also say that 90% of these diets and the people who go on them and the people who have failed at diets, because some people are very successful at diets, but I think then the people who have failed at these diets, one of the reasons that they have failed is because they just wanted to lose weight. So then what happens when they go off of the diet?
They put on all the weight again.
Yes! They go, and it's a vicious cycle. And then they have to go find a new diet. And it's just this constant merry-go-round of, okay, new diet, just to lose weight. And so then losing the weight becomes the goal. But the lifestyle isn't the thing that they adopt. And I think that that is the thing that when I was successful in dieting, that was the number one thing that I found, was it was the lifestyle. I was choosing the lifestyle, which then the byproduct was that I lost weight, is what I'm saying.
Well, yeah, I mean, it goes back to choice, but, that goes to surrendering to, there's two things that you surrender to, I think, though, in that equation, and it's a double-edged sword, or it can be, because one of the things, the first thing that you surrender to in the equation that you're setting up is outside influences. You're saying that basically the food is more powerful than me. Like, you're literally blaming the croissant. You're saying that the croissant has more power than me. And
not if you
I got news for you.
Not if you accept the lifestyle. But if you are accepting the diet, then yeah, maybe you're like, okay, the food has more power over me than it is. But what I'm saying is I accepted the lifestyle. And the number one thing that I did that attributed to me losing weight was I quit drinking. I didn't realize how many calories and alcohol I was consuming every week.
Oh, yeah. Alcohol is
loaded
with
insane.
Calories. Again, I think it comes back to choice, but then it also comes back to a kernel of acceptance, too. Because, like, I'm entering my 50s, and the men in my family, I have more of my dad's genetics than my mother's, and the men who have my dad's genetics on that side of the family, they become barrel-chested in their 50s. There's just no getting around it. And so in talking to my doctor, I've put on weight suddenly and done it in places that I don't usually do. And I say I'm not eating really any different. My exercise is about the same as it has been. Nothing's really changed, but suddenly weight's on and I'm not fitting into my clothes. And that's what's pissing me off, is it's like I got all these clothes and some of them don't fit, and that's a problem. And I also, want to feel good. I don't want to feel like I have all this weight on me. And, she's a really open-minded person. I've actually done her astrological chart, and, so I give her kudos for being a really open person, but she's still, at the end of the day, a doctor. She's a woman of science. And so she just looked at me and said, well, you can't fight genetics. And yeah, I'm fighting with that one right now because, again, as the open-minded person I like to think that I am, there is a kernel of acceptance in there for Jack to say, look, this is one where maybe free will and choice just isn't going to be enough. Maybe you just are going to have to accept a new build for Jack as you get older. And there are some people that have a physical, a biological disposition where you'd say the same thing. You'd just say, look, you're just a heavy person. It's glandular, as they say. And for you, sadly, it is. But is that true? Because we're also in a world where the story about the guy who was given a terminal diagnosis, given a month to live, and went down to the video store and rented every funny movie that he could get his hands on, every comedy that he ever loved, locked himself away in his house for that month, and laughed his ass off, went back to the doctor, and was found to be in complete remission and has never had it again. And that's just one example of things that are true, the real stories that have happened to people healing themselves with different kinds of energy. So, I think, again, we don't want to set ourselves up for disaster because we live in a fairy tale, but we live in a fairy tale. We do live in a world that, even though it's weighted down by certain scientific facts, by certain measures and weights, that things are possible. And we don't have the answers as to why. So I would think it's a cautionary tale. I would think that, again, there's an ounce of acceptance of, okay, maybe I'm just getting older and getting heavier is just a part of that. There also has to be an ounce of, I don't want to call it hope because that seems so corny, but, the mind opens. For as much acceptance as you have, you also open up your mind to more possibilities. You open up, maybe your heart, more importantly, your heart space opens up to the fact that I live in this miraculous thing where all this stuff is possible, so why couldn't I
Well,
do
and I
this?
think also people struggle with wanting to find answers. They're so desperate to want to find answers to things that are their problems, right? And I think whether it's maybe drug abuse or maybe it's wanting to change something in your life and maybe it just happens to be, weight or financial gain or whatever it might be, they're just looking for all these answers, right? And I think that sometimes the universe doesn't have an answer that's so cut and dry. And I think that sometimes the answer comes in the not the most obvious ways.
Well, you mentioned problems, and I think, what are your problems? And I think that's a good list that anybody could make and we all should know, because if you hear Jack ask that on the podcast, you say, well, I don't have any problems really. I mean, I'm okay with this. I'm okay with that. And you just basically say I'm complacent. Bullshit. We all complain about this, that, and the other all the time. So we all have a list of purported problems.
Right.
So I would make that list with myself and be very honest with myself about, okay, these are the things that I perceive to be problematic in my human existence right now.
Yeah.
How many of those things am I honestly causing? How many of those things am I truly responsible for? And get right down to, I don't have enough money. Well, what do you need the money for?
Right.
What is it that you're lacking? I'm guessing that most people who are going to take this quiz, no matter how tight things may be financially, they're sleeping under a roof in some kind of shelter every night. They're going to bed in a bed, maybe even with somebody who's helping them with the rent. They're eating enough to not be hungry when they go to sleep. I mean, there are people that have those problems every day, and that definitely is on their top 5 list or 3 list of problems every day. But most of us are going to, so what's your problem? The problem is that I don't have enough for other stuff. And I would be honest in saying that that's one of my problems right now. Perpetually, one of my problems is I don't have enough money. And it's, okay, Jack, well, what don't you have enough money for? The rent's been paid on time for ever. I can't remember. You never missed a rent or a mortgage payment in your life. So there's always been money for that. You've never gone to bed hungry. And my mother went to bed hungry when she was a child. They were destitute, very impoverished. Yeah. So she knows what that feels like. And she would bring out the big guns sometimes when we would get pissy about what dinner was or not getting Lucky Charms or something. And so again, I would challenge people to look at what they would perceive as their problems and say, how many of those are really not problems? They're just desires, because there is a difference between the two. And how many of the things that are problems are you pretty much just, pissing and moaning about? I mean, even if you've been given that diagnosis that you'll never walk again or something like that, people have, in one way, shape, or form, miraculously stood up and given the doctor the middle finger and said, look at me now. I mean, it does happen. So maybe it's just about a shift. Maybe it's about a shift in, again, accepting what you're being told, which is it's a cold, hard, dark universe. Everything is, hard-lined. Nothing that is miraculous is possible. There are no miracles, et cetera, et cetera. So get over it and just get in the wheelchair and go to the Paralympics and, be a spokesperson. And no, I want to do this again. Well, who says it isn't possible? I mean, of course it's possible. It's happened before. Why did it happen? Who cares why it happened? It's happened. And so therefore it makes it possible. So I'm not claiming to be a faith healer. I'm not saying to everybody in the audience that can't walk that they'll walk again by just saying, I want to tomorrow. But there's something there. There's a mechanism there that's worked for some people to create what we would call miracles. And I think the whole thing's a miracle, quite honestly. But
yeah, and by no means are we trying to make wide sweeps. And I'm sure there's a lot of pain that people are feeling in society or even in our audience and different things that they're struggling with. But you're right. I mean, I think that there's a certain amount of power that you give to those things in your life, and you're the one giving those things the power, whether it's materialism, whether it's alcohol, whether it's, whatever it might be. You're making that choice to give that thing in your life importance. And what is it that your life is built up of? In those building blocks, as I like to think about it. And is that building block the car that I drive? Well, no, it's not.
Well, but we make it the car that we drive a little bit too easily, unfortunately. And I think as it goes to, people that wake up in the morning and, they have no legs or arms and they, can't walk or they, more of that goes to attitude than anything, because while some of those people, in fact, maybe a vast majority of them even are not worried about it. They're like, look, I've accepted this happened to me and I live a fine life without all of my limbs and I'm making a bigger difference in the world and I have a positive attitude and an outlook on life and everything. And they blow most of us away who are walking around with all four limbs working just fine because we're too worried about the fact that pumpkin spice is gone and I didn't get over there for a last one before, or 100%. My football team didn't win this weekend, or I
do think that it's hard. It's hard when somebody hasn't gone through a challenge in their life to try and tell somebody that you can overcome any obstacle. Because I think unless you've been in that situation, unless you've been in the situation that your mom was in, you don't really know what it feels like. Unless you grew up in a third world country and you don't have electricity and all of a sudden you find yourself in America, you really didn't know what it felt like unless you've been in that situation, like walking a mile in their shoes. I don't know what Christopher Reeves felt when he was told he wouldn't walk again, but he became a very influential motivational speaker with the cards that he was dealt in life. And I think that essentially that was his message, was that you count the blessings that you have and you try to make the most out of the life you do have, not the life you don't have. Yeah,
and I'm not certainly suggesting that I know what it's like. I can't empathize because I've had the full use of my arms and legs my whole life.
But I'm just saying that I think that's one of the challenges that we have, is that it's hard to really put yourself in somebody's position unless you've had to overcome some kind of an obstacle like that, or you've felt with that, you've dealt with that obstacle yourself. Like, you know what? I've never been morbidly obese. I have no idea what that feels like. I'm sure it feels really bad. And I'm sure there's a lot of things that attribute to that beyond just the food that you eat. I think, there's a lot of things that go into that. You can get perspective in things a lot of times by going through struggles in life that other people just don't have any clue of.
Well, you certainly learn the most from the hardest times. That's what I've come to discover.
Yeah.
The times in your life that are the hardest teach you the most, whereas the times that are good really don't teach you much at all. They're just times to celebrate being here because you're kind of getting what you want, and there's nothing wrong with that. But
I'll tell you, when I had my brain aneurysm, and we haven't talked about that in this podcast before, but 2 years ago I suffered a ruptured brain aneurysm, and you talk about going from a point in your life where you feel like everything is on track, and then in a split second you wake up in the ICU. And you end up spending 4 weeks in the hospital. And it literally feels so defeating because you're having to learn how to walk again. You're having to, go to the bathroom in a stupid bucket that, some nurse who you don't even know is in the room with you. I mean, like, it literally felt like it was an out-of-body experience because it was so foreign to me. I had never even spent a night in the hospital. And then all of a sudden, here I am. And it kind of just goes to show that, like, your life can change so fast. And I had no control over it. The cause of the rupture was not because of anything that I was smoking or, the way I was driving, or it really had nothing to do with that. It was just a minute where I was on a treadmill and I was working out, and then I started lifting some weights, and all of a sudden I felt lightheaded and I blacked out.
And here you are.
And here I am. And I'm so happy to be alive. And one of the things that when I first walked out of that hospital, and I felt like I had been given not only a second chance of life, but I felt like I was looking at life through the lens of somebody else's eyes. I really felt like for a while, a long time, that I was almost like trying to figure out who I was again. And, I think there's probably some medical reasons for that as to, how my body was healing again. But one of the things that stood out immediately to me was, again, I told you I quit drinking because I immediately felt like before, when I would drink, I felt like maybe I did have a drinking problem. And then after going through that situation and having that experience, I was like, why am I cheating myself? Why am I cheating life by putting myself knowingly in a situation where I'm ingesting things that are poisoning my body? So I decided, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. Haven't had a drink since. I will say that I have enjoyed the things, and my wife and I every once in a while will talk about this. I sleep so much better now than I did before. And I didn't realize how much of bad sleep you can get from alcohol. When you're ingesting alcohol, I mean, you sleep terribly, even if you just have a few beers. I mean, I really feel like it affects you. And it's almost one of those things, too, where I feel like, when you're ingesting certain foods over and over and over again, maybe it's fast food, your body almost like gets in this rut where it just kind of constantly feels, and it never really gets above that level. And it just is constantly being kind of stifled in that situation, or, in that environment where you're just constantly being held back. And it was amazing to me that was something that changed. I don't have to wear contacts anymore. And wow. So I was asking the doctor, I was like, why is that I don't have to wear contacts? I didn't realize it when I was in the hospital, but when I went home, I could see the mountains. And the only thing that I've been able to hear that makes some sense is that maybe the aneurysm was blocking blood flow to my eye.
Corneas.
Yeah, my corneas. And so then it was causing the eye to...
Or retinas.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that makes sense. But, yeah, and I didn't mean that to bring up in the sense of, look at this, you can do it yourself. But, I do think that one of the things that I walked away with in that situation was just an appreciation for people and an appreciation for people in my life, because those were some of the loneliest times I think I've ever spent on this earth, was being cooped up in a hospital bed, not being able to get out. I mean, I was 38 years old, right? I mean, I shouldn't have been in the ICU, but I was. And it was just, it felt like my life had been taken away. But, God was good. And I was blessed with the second chance, and I was able to take my experience. And, I think if anything, you realize that this doesn't last forever. Even the thing that I'm experiencing now, whether it's a high or a low, it doesn't last forever. And this too will pass.
Yeah, the experience is designed to be ephemeral. It's not supposed to be forever. I would say thank God for that, quite honestly. Like we go back to the Larry King thing, with Neil deGrasse Tyson, would you really want to live forever? Yes, Larry King is all over it because he's Larry King. He doesn't want to give up that. But, for the rest of us, it's like, I think I'm all ready to go whenever.
I wonder how many more wives Larry King would have had if he lived forever. Probably infinite.
Yeah, right.
And they kept getting younger and younger as he got older and older.
Well, sure. That's any man with red suspenders is going to tell you that. So I think the question that I would ask then of myself, or since I'm me, I would ask it of you. Mm-hmm. Having gone through that tunnel and come out the other side, is the thing that, of all of that, which is all, highly captivating. And I think we've all had, I don't know if we've had experiences that are similar to yours, but I think we may have all had something happen to us or be in line to have something happen to us that is similar, which I would call sort of a reorganizing of our lives. Something happens to us that changes our priorities. We have things that shuffle around. And it doesn't have to be a medical emergency or a situation like yours. It can be a lot of other things that would be considered traumatic, that would be considered life-altering. But,
losing a job or whatever it might be.
Well, yeah, and it's all over the board, and it's apples to oranges because different things affect people differently. But the thing that you said was that stood out to me was you started to appreciate people more. Mm-hmm. And with that, I think it goes unsaid that there is now an acute appreciation that is vastly greater for yourself and for all of the things around you within that equation. There's also probably an understanding, a much greater understanding in an outward sense of what is truly important, what matters, as they say, and what really can kind of slip down the ladder and it runs through the cracks. So my question for you then would be, you're talking about you're on this road, everything's humming along fine, life is perfect, it's just great. Would you have gotten there without this happening?
I don't think so.
Well, then there's your reason.
Yeah.
In my opinion, then there's your reason for why it happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great point to bring up, because I think one of the things that I've now appreciated from that experience was that if bad things happen in my life, I look at them now as opportunities. And I really do. I look at them as opportunities to change. I look at them as opportunities to learn something new. I have had people come through my life in many different ways that have not necessarily looked to me for guidance in their life, but I tap into people's lives a lot more intimately than I used to. And so there's this desire to want to help people, and there's this desire to want to not just share a story with them, but to really see people come to the same level of enlightenment, where you really just start looking at what is the fiber of my being. And you and I have talked about this on the podcast, I think, where my interest in the universe and things that happen beyond this planet have multiplied 10 times. Before this happened, I didn't have a concern at all about nature or about the things that happen that we don't have an answer for. And I am just so in awe now of this fact that, the simple fact that if we got into a jet right now and took off and started going towards the sun, it would take us 60 years to get to the sun. That's how far away the sun is. And yet the light that emanates from the sun only takes 4 minutes to get to Earth.
Yeah. And the light of some of the stars that we see in the sky at night are from stars that died thousands of years ago. Because it's taken the light that long to travel this far.
I don't even understand that concept. But just the whole idea is that we are living in a world that still doesn't have answers. And that's okay. because we're going to get up tomorrow, God willing, and we're going to get to do it all over again.
There's, I'll recommend this. I know, we play some of my vast music library of wacky and esoteric, arcane stuff all the time. As
Your eclectic music, if you will.
Yeah, as we say goodbye. But I will specifically point out a song and an artist who's he was a genius. Anybody who knows him, he would be right up there on the list. His name is Kevin Gilbert. He had a band called Giraffe, and there's a song which is called The Way Back Home. The song is a story, a man who happened along a bum who claimed to be Jesus. In the lyrics of this song have a dialogue with each other, essentially. Kind of having some fun with him. He's willing to accept what he feels is this probably mental illness that's made this guy who's without a place to go that we would call a home. The last line of the song, because the way back home, he continues to ask the question about finding the way back home. And the song sort of chronicles the ways that the man and that all of us in the world look for the way back home. And he asks him, the man who thinks he's Jesus, do you know the way back home? And he says, you already know the answer. You're just not listening yet. Love is the way back home. And it's a really great song. It's genius, quite frankly. And, I'm glad that it never attained high degrees of popularity so it could be sullied by the corporateers of the world. But Kevin was something else. He had some other solo stuff, but he was a real poet in his lyricism. So I would highly recommend that. But that's kind of what that makes me think of when, where this conversation goes is you're talking about looking for answers. And yet I really don't feel like, and we talked about Alex Trebek earlier, which is kind of funny too. So I feel like it is a game of Jeopardy, life in so many ways. I don't think that it's a life that's filled with questions that need to be answered. I think it's the other way around. I think we have all of the answers that we need, and we create the question for no reason. And, I was raised, like I said, my story wasn't exactly like the Buddha, but I kind of liken it to that a little bit because, I really was sort of raised behind the castle walls. We had a lot of money when I was a kid, and I got everything I ever wanted. And that was the worst thing that ever happened to me, I guarantee it. Because what that did was it set up a precedent in my young mind that these are the things that you should want and that attaining them is the most important thing at all costs. And it doesn't happen overnight for most of us. We're not going to go loincloth, as I like to say, and walk around in slippers and a robe. Although, something interesting, there's a guy that I just started seeing, and I saw him on the street today, who walks around and looks just like Jesus with dreadlocks, that wears slippers and a bathrobe, and he walks around on the avenue, the main drag in our town.
Yeah.
And I saw him out walking today. So, again, interesting the song should come up, interesting that he should come up, interesting that all of this should come up, because there's a reason why it all did and why that all meshed together in just one simple day, because it's guiding the way. It's pointing toward the light. And it's not saying that the direction that you're going is the blight necessarily. You're not doomed, but you're so much better off if you go toward the light.
All right, so remind everybody again, what is the music we're listening to?
Giraffe is the band, and the song is The Way Back Home.
And I'll find a way back home. And it's one for the money, and it's two for the show, yeah. And it's three to get ready, but there's no place to go, yeah. 'Cause I'm on the move now.
All right. We'll see you next time, Jack.
All right, we'll see you next time. Let's find that guy who looks like Jesus and bring him.
Sounds good. In fact, I think I see him right over there.
Go get him!
And the man who was Jesus lit his last cigarette, and he spoke in a whisper with a voice of regret. You've all heard the answer, but you're not listening yet. Love is the way back home.
Well, it looks like Jack and Michael have finished up their latest chat about all things existence. But if anything they said got your own existence brewing, be sure and catch their other talks at existencebrewing.com and drop them an email to share your thoughts using contact@existencebrewing.com.
Existence Brewing.